if you tackle the financial service problem first, then you have like a huge front to scale. It gives you the muscle, right? Because then you also have the volume, then you keep improving your margins. And it's so beautiful. Like you have like a resistant business. I mean, in our case, I think was, okay, let's tackle a problem and have like the whole infrastructure. Then let's diversify in a way that we can tackle different macro environments. And now, okay, how we keep improving the margins and adds a bunch of like things that actually make our customers' life easier, so they are very attached to us and they grow with us.
Is this thing on?
Yesterday's price is not today's price.
Thank you, Fat Joe, and welcome to Run the Numbers, where I interview world-class CFOs, operators, and the investors who fund them on how to get the most out of your company's performance. This podcast is a playbook of sorts for ambitious people in the worlds of finance, strategy, and operations. Today, my guest is Camilla Morais, the Chief Operating Officer at Brex. Camilla climbed the ranks at Brex in the finance department, focusing on FP&A and risk management before taking over global operations. And when I say global, you'll hear how integrated Brex is within the worldwide payments fabric. On this episode, we cover the business of payments and spend management, more specifically how fintech companies actually make money, how Billy McFarland possibly started a credit card company before Fyre Festival. Note, Brex had nothing to do with him. I just had to ask someone from the payments space how the hell this could have happened. How competitive moats have evolved in fintech, how serving enterprise customers in fintech eventually and counterintuitively morphs into having B2C qualities for its end users, and how crucial it is for the chief operating officer to stay close to the voice of the customer. What surprised me the most is how intimately Camilla knows Brex's end users. It's very cliche for operators to say they live in the trenches, but she's literally in the Slack support queue answering tickets to stay in shape. And it was cool to hear how she layers in a risk management mindset to running the company's day-to-day while balancing super aggressive growth goals. All this and much, much more after a short word from our sponsors. As a SaaS CFO, I know firsthand how difficult it is to report on SaaS metrics. We've all seen a deal close at the end of the month, but the customer's contract doesn't actually start until the middle of the next month, creating the classic discrepancy between bookings or committed ARR and actual ARR, the real stuff. That's why I'm so pumped to be partnering with Maxio, a company trusted by thousands of SaaS companies to understand these reporting nuances. They basically built and automated the SaaS dashboard I tried to manually cobble together for 3 years. In 2022, SaaS Optics and Chargeify combined to become Maxio, the only billing and financial operations platform that was purpose-built for B2B SaaS. They're helping SaaS finance teams automate billing and RevRec, manage collections and payments, and put together investor-grade reporting packages. Visit maxio.com/runthenumbers to learn how Maxio can help you supercharge financial operations in 2024. Request a demo using the Run the Numbers link and receive a 10% discount on your first year with Maxio. That's maxio.com/runthenumbers. Quick math, the less your business spends on operations, on multiple systems, on delivering your product or service, the more margin you have and the more money you keep. That's the goal, isn't it? But with higher expenses on materials, employees, distribution, and borrowing, everything costs more. Yesterday's price is not today's price. So to reduce costs and headaches, smart businesses are graduating to NetSuite by Oracle. NetSuite is the #1 cloud financial system, bringing accounting, financial management, inventory, HR into one platform and one source of truth. With NetSuite, you reduce IT costs because NetSuite lives in the cloud with no hardware required. Access from anywhere. You cut the cost of maintaining multiple systems because you've got one unified business management suite. You improve efficiency by bringing all your major business processes into one platform, slashing manual tasks and errors. Over 37,000 companies, wow, that's a lot of customers, have already made the move. So do the math. See how you'll profit with NetSuite. Now, through April 15th, NetSuite is offering a one-of-a-kind flexible financing program. Head to netsuite.com/metrics. That's netsuite.com/metrics. Ooh, yeah, you know your boy loves some metrics. That's netsuite.com/metrics. Please go there, guys. I really need it. Camilla, welcome to what I believe is the 50th episode of the Run the Numbers podcast.
Thank you so much, CJ, for having me here. It's an honor to be here, like in a such important podcast date.
The first one was Michael Tannenbaum from Brex, and now I get you on the 50th. So I'm definitely a fan. You've been so supportive of me as a company, and I'm excited for a cool conversation.
Oh, that's amazing. Michael is not only an amazing friend, but also a mentor throughout my whole career. So,
and he has an unintentionally dry sense of humor. I learned on the podcast. He was pretty funny. So appreciate his wit.
Yes, he is. Very hard to beat on this one.
What I didn't get to ask him a ton about, we talked a lot about his career, him working at SoFi and his journey at Brex and how he was, the third person there in the kitchen. I wanted to ask you, I love to nerd out on business models, and a lot of listeners like myself may be more familiar with the typical SaaS side of the tech world. What are the ways that fintech companies or payment platforms typically monetize their business models?
Yes, no, great question. So the way that we monetize, it's normally through us, like, hey, it could be like a transaction fee, like that's really common for most of like the fintechs. But for us specifically, and I think this is like actually a huge advantage for Brex, since we started mostly in the cards business, we do monetize with like the interchange revenue. So basically, what is this interchange revenue, right? So whenever like you swipe a card, what happens is Brex takes a interchange rate, a take rate on like each of like those transactions. So a little bit go to the network, which could be like Visa, MasterCard, but actually because Brex does take the credit risk, most come to us. So for Brex as a whole, of course, we can monetize with like interest rates, with like real deposits for like our Brex Cash, our business account. But I would say that the main source of revenue is still our interchange revenue through the cards.
And so do you have to go as Brex and negotiate individually with Visa and MasterCard?
So we are basically a MasterCard's provider in the end of the day. We have been working really closely with like them since day one. One thing that is interesting about how you issue cards is you normally need a bank partner. And we were pretty selective since day one on like finding, okay, we want to partner with like banks where we're going to be like the unique or like one of the only ones that would be using this bean. So we could have like the bean ourselves. And the way that we find was actually partnering with MasterCard from the get-go to find someone that was already like working with them. So the reality, I mean, the best thing that you can do is based on like your customer base, you have like an agreement with like MasterCard to basically, okay, how much is the interchange rates that you do charge for like some specific merchants. So we do not negotiate with the merchants ourselves. So MasterCard have like those negotiations on our behalf. But what happens is there are some different type of like, okay, it could be leads like on MasterCard, and like those have like different take rates depending on the merchant itself.
Okay, so in my simple mind, I'm going to play out a scenario here. I go into a bakery, I pay with MasterCard. MasterCard is negotiated with that bakery. It's 3% per transaction. You have gone in and made a deal with MasterCard and said we get X percent of it, and then MasterCard keeps the difference between the two. Is that right?
Yeah, so we have like a fixed difference with like MasterCard, but what happens is, so for a bakery and small business, we can actually have like a much higher take rate, sometimes even 4%. But if you're talking with like large merchants, they normally have like a more powerful like negotiation with MasterCard. And one thing that is interesting here in how MasterCard negotiates with like those merchants is depending on the bean, depending on like what are the cards that MasterCard is working with, they can negotiate different merchants. So if it's a much more consumer card, then the rate would be different. So if you like have a card more like enterprise companies, then like there is much lower risk there. So like then you normally actually even are able to negotiate a higher take rate for those transactions.
Sometimes I get distracted and I can't let a thought go. So if you remember the Fyre Festival guy, Billy McFarland, before he did that, he had this company called Magnesis, I think, which was like the stupidest name for a credit card company. But I always wonder like how all these, and I'll just use him as an example, there do seem to be a lot of credit card companies that pop up and you're like, how the hell did they somehow get a credit card? Take me through that. Like, because some of them seem a little odd.
No, but that's actually a very good question. And I was so glad that we're getting into the details on this. So for Brex, it was very important to have like our bean. our number that was like uniquely identified by, okay, all those cards are like a Brex card. But this is not actually necessary, right? So there are companies like Makeda that could help like new issuers.
Marketa, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
So I think Makeda is actually a good example. And Brex worked with Makeda in our very first days. That's how we were actually able to issue cards right away. Or even like we're a bank, which could be like also a great example to how we can issue cards right into the market. I think for us specifically, we knew since early on that having the whole stack in-house and even considering have like the processor in-house would give us an advantage in the market to create rewards the way that we wanted, to create authorizations the way that we wanted. So in those scenarios, it's much better when you have like a direct partnership with a bank, or of course, if you're like a bank yourself. We didn't want to be a bank, given all the regulatory that comes with it, but we wanted to partner with like one very closely, so we could have like all those controls to actually also on behalf of the customer, how we could be more flexible and try to give them back.
Speaking of that, I have noticed that a lot of fintech services are free to the end user. So maybe free banking, no overdraft fees, or you get paid early if it's B2C. How do you make money off those services if it's free? Is it just that interchange rate, or are there other services too?
No, excellent question. And like each company has their own model. Like B2C is very different than B2B. So I will try to focus a little bit more on Brex, and then if we can get like to each example, I can opine on those. But for Brex as an example, we want to be like this platform. I mean, we serve like multi-segments today, but for early stage companies, right? For tech companies, we want to be like this first like account that the business can open. We want to be like this single platform that allow everything to really be seamless to the customer. So in that sense, the way that we see that the business account, it's more like a way to actually get all the operational spend and the operation day to day in a way to then leverage more like the cards, because it's like all together. So like we think more like, okay, as an attach rate or even like as an acquisition method, because we simplified it, that the customers spend financials, then we get like the cards and we grow with the customer as they grow with us. But for other companies could be different. So like in that case, we are willing to basically give like, okay, all the transactions are free. But then we could make money on like, okay, we do have like the deposits. Brex is a broker dealer, so we can leverage and like it gets like in and get the money with like the interest itself. Also, of course, we give out back to the customer too.
So I was the treasurer for a short stint at the prior company I worked for, and it was a cybersecurity company. We'd raised a bunch of money at the time. And I remember my CFO was like, you should use each banking relationship as kind of a chip, right? Like you don't want to do all your banking with just one bank because maybe they'll become a customer later, et cetera. And so I remember I gave the operational stuff, which I found out was the most valuable because there's a lot of inflows and outflows to one bank. And then I went to somebody else thinking he'd be pumped. And remember, this is like 0 interest rate environment. And I was like, hey, and you can have the treasury account where we'll just park cash. And he kind of looked at me like, okay, so I won like the consolation prize here.
Yes. No, but that's actually a very good point. For us, I think one of like the beauty of like our business is we kind of like have our internal hedge, I would say. So when interests are high, we make even more money with like our business accounts, right? And then that's when like the companies are spending a little bit less, when we actually have to pay more interest with like our own facilities, like with securitization, etc. for the card. But then when interest is low, that's when the companies spend more and the card business is like booming. So I think we found our way to win in both ends. So yes, we're very glad that we hedge ourselves to in a macro scenario.
You've diversified your revenue streams, which is neat. And it kind of brings me to my next topic. I do want to know how your competitive moats for Brex and just, I mean, I guess in your industry too, how have those evolved over time?
Yes, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, Brex was the first one to really start providing a business card solution for especially recently incorporated companies, right, for startups, and finding this way to be very flexible with like not only rewards, but how you manage your spend with like a lot of budgets and rules and controls. But as we grew so quick, I think we also showed the markets like this huge market. But I think for us, the biggest, I would say our moat is more like we are very unique in our way that we provide this financial software for very early on when companies are starting to like actually when they're like public enterprise. But it's not only like the financial service, it's also financial software that actually really help the customers to gain a lot of like time back and control better their spend. And we are also global. So it's funny when even like we think about our product release and our roadmap, what we're trying to do, like no one was actually able to do. And we can talk about many companies that have done exceptional on the SaaS side or companies that have done exceptional on the financial service side. But very few had actually tried to do both when going like really for enterprise segment. And globally, you honestly have none. You have none that have really tried to do this globally. And like the reality is more and more companies have like employees all over the globe. And if we're talking about enterprise, non-new news, like they go after new markets, right? So it's much easier if you have like a centralized solution for like that also works kind of like locally. So it's not that you want to go to India or to Brazil and be able to use your card. And the reality is if you use like, Brex works pretty well. And like, but we had to find new thousands of like ways around that. But yes, I think having like this global financial and software all together is definitely like our main advantage.
Do you think there's a natural ordering of how those things happen? Like, did Brex start at the beginning saying we need to be global from the start? And did they say we need to start with this product and in order to get to that product? Or was it happenstance? It just worked out really well.
When we started, we always had like this dream, big ambitious that we wanted to solve all expense management and we wanted to be all in one for like the companies. It was easier because there was a gap on the startups and on the tech side. So when we started, it was like, okay, we really need to build our infrastructure from scratch. We really need to own the financial stack. So by that, we applied and we got our own broker-dealer license. We worked directly with like MasterCard and with like our bank partners to the first bank that we worked with to get our first bean, they didn't even have a relationship with MasterCard. So we applied with them. So to have like even more control. So we have control of like the processing. And the reason why I say that is I think it's pretty important to start with like the financial service because this is very hard to build. Not only from a regulatory perspective, but you have to know how to balance risk. And if you try to add the risk factor later on, it's just like, it's such a big deal for you that, companies, if you start with software and then you try to learn all how you manage risk.
That's what I was getting at.
You're a CFO. I don't know if like you're really...
Well, it's hard to do. I always say it's hard to do risk in reverse.
Exactly.
If you don't build it from the outset, you're kind of screwed. It's not like an add-on. You can just be like, hey, now we're just going to de-risk certain areas of this.
Yes. And like, I say this internally, there are like many things that we can swing, right? If you have like a resistant business, you can try one strategy. If you're able to quick pivot, then you can try something else. But there is one thing that the market doesn't forgive is if you lose a lot of money with risk. So then if you start your business fixing this, not even fixing this, but finding a solution from that in the beginning, like making this part of like your DNA. I used to be in finance at Brex early days. So it was part of our value prop that I presented to all the investors, our innovative underwriting model. Today, it's just part of like how Brex was built. So we don't even have to think about it. So now we can go SaaS. Now we can go, okay, let's go to global markets. I think it was not intentionally thought that way, but we knew that and our founders were very clear on that because they had a fintech company before. But I think it was very clear for them that if you tackle the financial service problem first, then you have like a huge front to scale.
I love how you're pointing out that you tackle the financial services component first, because that is a good control point or starting point to expand your TAM. I was having a different conversation with someone who is a marketplace CFO, and they were saying that it's very hard to go from software to marketplace. It's easier. Like, it's not easy to start a marketplace by any means. Like, it's very hard. It's two businesses at once, but you can then add on software to sell to different players within that marketplace ecosystem. And I think what you said, it was just so important to start with that financial services component.
Yeah, it gives you the muscle, right? Because then you also have the volume, and then the SaaS is like an attach. Then you keep improving your margins, and it's so beautiful. Like, you have like a resistant business. I mean, in our case, I think was, okay, let's tackle a problem and have like the whole infrastructure. Then let's diversify in a way that we can tackle different macro environments. And now, okay, how we keep improving the margins and adds a bunch of like things that actually make our customers' life easier, so they are very attached to us and they grow with us.
Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. CRMs are slow, hard to configure, and overly complicated. Attio changes that. Attio is a radically new type of CRM built specifically for the next generation of companies. It's flexible, easily configures to your unique data structure, and works for any go-to-market motion from self-serve to sales-led. Attio automatically enriches your contacts, syncs your emails and calendars, lets you create powerful custom reports, and quickly builds intricate Zapier-style automations. Say goodbye to one-size-fits-all CRMs and outdated user experiences. With Attio, you can focus on scaling your company to the next level. Try Attio instantly at attio.com. That's ATTIO.com. That is ATTIO.com. Well, you know what I always say, maintaining compliance is never complete, which is why most security and IT teams feel like they're always in audit purgatory. I'm there right now. But there is a solution, and it's easier than you think. Escape the infinite loop by using Thoropass's compliance and audit solution. Thoropass is the only solution using AI-infused technology and in-house auditors to take your team from start to stamp without leaving the platform. As a winner of multiple G2 awards, including top awards for usability and service, your team is in good hands with Thoropass. From onboarding with dedicated experts to audits from in-house auditors who know every aspect of your framework needs, you can have complete confidence in your Thoropass compliance journey. Thoropass is the only solution to offer audits for your most needed security frameworks. I'm talking HIPAA to High Trust and SOC 2 to ISO 27001. Woo! If you need PCI, DSS, pen tests, or any other major compliance framework, Thoropass can hook you up. With Thoropass, you never need to worry again. Relax, we fix audits. Find more at thoropass.com. That's THOROPASS.com. Tell them your boy CJ sent you. They'll hook you up. Boom. So we spoke to Matthew Newcomb, the CFO at Chime, and Chime is B2C focused, right? Are there any major differences in business models when it comes to B2C FinTech versus B2B FinTech?
I mean, I joke that I really do not want to go into B2C as like the COO now. When you need to manage risk and regulatory and like being able to expand beyond that, B2C is more complicated. You have like way more regulations to follow. When you tackle consumers, it's definitely like different like than tackling business. Plus the brand aspect that I'm not even gonna get into it. But I think for us was less about regulatory risks, etc. For us was there were so many solutions. Let's go back to 2017, 2018, right? That there were many solutions tackling consumer space at the time, but there were very, very few actually tackling B2B finance. I think Brex was definitely like one of the first ones. Like, of course, you had Stripe and like Spare, but on our side, on like the issuing side, actually taking credit risk. I mean, Brex was definitely one of the first, and definitely the first one to be very successful, which of course attracts many other companies, and that's what we have been seeing in the last few years. But I think for us was that like the type of solutions that were in the market, and there was very little innovation on the B2B space.
Something that does seem to be a similarity, though, is Matt had said that for them, like the Northstar to like get and expand from was to get the account that someone got their payroll deposited into each week. That was like the operating account that they wanted access to. That seems to be somewhat of a similarity of what you were targeting.
Yes, no, that's definitely true. So, I mean, I talked about what was different, right? But there are many similarities, especially like, okay, how you actually grow with like your customer. It doesn't matter if it's B2C or B2B. So what are the early signs that actually really attach the customer to you? On our banking product, right? For us, it's actually very important. It's exactly the same thing. When we attach payroll, that's when we say, okay, checked. Because like the trouble to go to move your payroll to like a different account, a different provider, it's such a trouble that you're not going to go through that easily. So in that sense, it's very similar.
I would guess though that the marketing spend is a lot different. Like if you looked at the P&L for B2C versus B2B.
Yes, and then you have to think about CAC. It's way more like related to volume than actually a one business account spend way more like than in consumers. One thing that I would say is in our space, the more up markets that we go, the more enterprise that we go, I would say that we kind of like even tackle B2B and B2C, even though the employee is not Brex customer itself. They are like a user, right? So when we started, serving like smaller companies, yes, like they maybe had like 1 to 10 users. But now, we deploy Brex to thousands. When I say thousands, like multiple thousands of users in a single company, which is quite interesting because then you need to be, they will not be doing like the accounting with Brex, but they want to make sure that if they are traveling, if they are booking a trip, it has to feel almost like their consumer card. If not, they're going to use their consumer card and ask the company for like a reimbursement, which Brex does offer that. But for us, it's much better to also get the revenue on the transaction itself.
That's wild. It comes full circle that once you get to a company that big, you have to provide them a B2C experience.
Yes. So you nailed exactly that. It's from the experience perspective. The user needs to feel that it's exactly like a B2C because we're going to make it seamless for them. But we also want the manager to feel okay approving like all those expenses. The accountants need to feel, this is like a great solution because it really saved hours closing the books. The travel manager needs to be okay because like from a procurement perspective, we are making the whole buying power easy.
That's awesome. We had spoken to Adam Sawicki, former Brex employee as well, former CFO, and he had spoken of how Rippling looks at each person as kind of the atomic unit, and you have this employee graph of how you can see basically based on their spend and based on their demographic stuff, what services and stuff the company may need. Brex also sits at an interesting point where each person at the company may have an expense account. It's just a very different world than I'm used to, where we're selling to just one customer, and that is the customer in the account. Brex has a customer which may have tens of thousands of employees, which are almost like separate accounts within there that all have different information that you can get trends out of.
That's why I said we need to be global. The main reason why we needed to be global was not to serve companies in different markets, but one, there are employees traveling globally. I do travel globally for Brex, right? But there are also like, you need to have like, normally larger companies have like employees really living and operating like in a different market. So then their experience need to be the same. And like, it's so interesting, like when you think about that. So even like, the physical card is not as important when you are outside of like the United States. So then the mobile wallet becomes like much more important. So like the experience needs to be extremely seamless when we tackling those. Then you have like 3DS authorizations. Like, so understanding the demographics of like our customers' employee base actually help us to drive a lot of like the roadmap. Because each country, especially when you, again, tackling and offering a type of like financial service, they have different regulations. They have, folks have different behaviors. And in order to offer the best solution for the company, you need to offer a solution that fits the employee needs. So I kind of go back to this B2C point. So yes, it goes full cycle.
That's a great segue, because I'd love to know how you think about the lifetime value of a user at Brex.
Great question. Oh my gosh, and we had so many discussions about it. I think, first of all, it's very hard to answer this question when you think, okay, a lifetime value of like a Brex customer, right? Because it depends on the segment and depends when we acquire them. So we segment our customer base, and I'm a huge fan. Sometimes I even say we shouldn't have like LTV and CAC calculations in a total basis, but we should have, like, honestly, by segment. If someone asks you, you should answer which segment you want to ask. You want to know.
Right. I love that.
Yes, right? Because people keep asking the total. The total doesn't really mean anything. But from an LTV perspective, I think two things are interesting. One, the segmentation. And second is because we do acquire customers very early on their journey, the cost, like, to acquire those customers, right? So our CAC is pretty low. But then they start spending very early on. So we do need to building, like, I love when we talk about that, like, because it's kind of like a graduation factor. Okay, how many companies will actually go from like a pre-seed to seed stage to Series A to Series B, and then like you have to apply all those formulas. So like whenever like you're serving the tech space, this is pretty important because it does change drastically like the LTV on the timing of like acquiring the customer. It's then very different for like enterprise, like let's say. But enterprise, one thing that is always important to think is I'm a huge believer of like land and expand. And what I mean by that is it's pretty hard and probably not the most effective way to try to get into the enterprise company with like all offers. Because I mean, it's a big deal for like the company too, right? So it takes like 6 months and sometimes to a year to really implement our expense management, travel, everything that we offer. Sometimes even only for like a cards provider, it can take 6 months. Depends on 10,000 employees, 20,000 employees, and globally. So starting with like, okay, one product offer, one country, and from there keep expanding, I think it's pretty critical. So then if you go back to your LTV question, you also need to nail this down. Okay, how is like your attach rate of like those customers, how you can actually upsell and keep growing with the customers. So those two things are pretty important.
That's a great way to think about it. I like how you mentioned the edge of the wedge, in essence, land with one product and continue to expand from there.
Yeah, no, for sure.
What's Brex's Northstar metric for optimizing company performance? So we've touched on LTV, we've touched on CAC, we've said you have to segment it out. Other than those two metrics, what do you look to say we're going in the right direction?
And I think Pedro just launched this in a recent memo that he actually shared like broadly in the market in a blog post. So for us, the two Northstar metrics are net revenue retention. I think that is crucial for us. And the reason, again, one, because we acquire customers very early on, and two, because we really believe in the land and expand. So like make sure that our customer base is growing with us. I mean, and that revenue retention is not only customers continue to grow, but I mean, making sure that the customer base is healthy, that we don't have like, I mean, a lot of like, of course, like, I mean, when you serve early stage companies, you're going to have units churn by definition, but especially as you go up markets, the churn should be much lower, right? And then the expectation is that those accounts grow with us. So net revenue retention, super important. I always look at those like when I'm looking myself to investing in business, but definitely like a Northstar metric for Brex. And then the second one is, and there are many ways that you can do that. But at Brex specifically, we look at the rep productivity. And then you can think about like how you attach like revenue to that. But basically the way that we like this metric is how much revenue a new rep like can bring to the business. And like the productivity matters here because you have to think about the business velocity too. So how you think about expediting onboarding, how you think about expediting implementation, make sure that the customer migrates Spain to start using the product as soon as they sign. So like it's kind of like it's a helpful metric to take all of this into consideration too.
Do you look at the net revenue to Brex on a rep employee level, or because it's a throughput model, you look at kind of the gross sales that goes through the reps accounts?
Oh, yes, we look like the realized revenue per rep. So the first one.
And since you're multi-product, then you can also say the rep also helped bring down SaaS deals or SaaS modules as well.
No, definitely. Like this is definitely part of like the calculation. It's not only a commitment on an expected transactional revenue, right? But definitely like the SaaS piece of it is pretty important. How many users you bring in, like paying a platform fee, like paying per user.
I always say the GOAT or the greatest of all time metric is ARR revenue per employee, like overall for a company, because there's nowhere to hide.
Yes, nowhere to hide. Yes. I mean, and that's a good one. I think the reason why we really want to focus on the rep productivity is because, I mean, we say that this is our year of growth, like many companies are saying that. So last year we had focused a lot on like our margins and like how we actually like improves that. And like, oh my gosh, it was a great year, like in that sense for Brex. But I think like this year for us, it's really important like to keep the growth machine going. But when you think, I mean, it's definitely like great to divide by employee too.
And there is a formula. There's a formula to it as well, where you're taking a look at your capacity model and saying, how much can I get for each incremental rep that I put into the system?
Yes, exactly. And then we look at this. I wouldn't say on a daily basis because it's going to look like that we're a freak, but almost on a daily basis, yes.
How long do reps take to ramp in your type of model? Like, is it standard to SaaS, like where SMBs 3 months, mid-market 6 months, enterprise 9 to 12 months?
I would say ours is a little bit quicker, to be honest. But again, it's different by segment. I would say reps that on the early stage side, I would say more like 2 months, honestly. But in enterprise, it would be something like around 6, less than 9.
That's a fast time to value. That's awesome.
Yes. But there are a lot of investments behind that on enablement, like in how we expedite the demo, like how we give like the tools to our reps to perform too.
And then there's like reps from the sense of new deals, hunters, and then there's reps from the sense of expanding deals, farmers. Do you kind of look at your sales force in that way as a typical SaaS business too?
Exactly. You nailed. We do have our account executives, which we normally say they are hunting for like new deals. And we have like our client sales executives thinking about how we can expand our customer base. Of course, we have customer success, we have like dedicated support, etc., to maintain the customer. But from a sales perspective, yes, we do have like upsell and like net new customers.
Nice. Shout out to all the reps trying to hit their quota at the end of Q1 when you listen to this. Yeah. Shout out to all the homies. Camilla, one of the reasons why I was so excited to talk to you is because looking at your resume, you started in finance. You have a heavy FP&A background. You came up the ranks on the finance side of the equation. Now you're on the operations side. You're the COO. Congrats. Awesome to see that. How do you balance your time spent on strategy versus execution? How do you determine which altitude you fly at throughout the day?
Excellent question. And just fun facts to that, I'm actually an engineer.
No way. Come on. You can't be all three. Save some for the rest of us.
No. It's because like it's a fun journey, right? Yes, like an engineer coding since I was young, then finance, then operations. So, I mean, how do you balance your time on like the strategy side of the house and the day to day? Even though, and it's funny because I like being very hands-on. I delegate a lot, and I feel like, I mean, my team is amazing. I wouldn't be here without them. I think being close to the details and being close to the customer helps me a lot. I'm almost a freak about it. So I still review any large credit limits that we approve, which people, yes, I review all of them. But not only that, my chief credit officer is also amazing.
For the benefit of users, why is a credit limit important in this context?
Definitely a great question, because that's like how we manage risk, right? From a credit risk perspective, like that's how much exposure we are deciding to take with like every single customer. The threshold has been changing over time. I remember there was a time that it was above 1 million.
Yeah.
And now it's much higher than that.
No cap. Yeah.
But but then one of the things that I do, and giving me so much insight, we have this customer satisfaction survey in the end of like any support ticket. I review every single customer response that is less than 5. And I review also every single NPS response. So I'm obsessed. I mean, seriously, it takes me a lot of time, and like then I keep pinging people. Then I have my own channel to see all of them because then I was freaking people out. But this gives me so much insight to like how the customer, how the users are experiencing our product. That really helps me not only like manage risk, which is definitely critical for my role, but also gives me to partner with like product, give me like so much insights to partner with like the whole, like a chief revenue officer, with like the whole leadership team. Like, I mean, I'm almost like there for the customer. Like I know like their pain points. Whenever you're going to discuss the roadmap, like, I mean, I know what's going to matter for the customers and what's not going to matter to the customers because I see everything that goes wrong. So it's interesting that how much time I really spend on the day-to-day really helps me to set a much better strategy. So that's why I wanted to go into what exactly do I do to explain how it helps me to have like a view of everything.
I just want to flag for people listening that I asked you how you spend time on your day, and you started with the customer and with support tickets. I've never got that answer, and it's incredible because if you think about it, everything emanates from that, right? The product strategy comes from it, the revenue comes from it, and you're down in the weeds of reading the support tickets, but then you're taking that information and elevating it back up to 40,000 feet and saying, how does this then inform our strategy?
We have like this weekly leadership meeting at Brex, and one of like the sessions is always start with the customer, and I always have my examples, right? So it's almost like a session for Camila to talk about like learnings. Of course, everyone talks about their own learnings too, but I normally, I mean, I don't remember the time that I didn't have like one customer example to highlight. But I think this is really important because that sets, I mean, there is a say, our co-CEO and co-founder says a lot, which is if the anecdote is not following the data, like really trust like the anecdote. And I really believe on that because sometimes we're so focused on one metric, we're so focused on like one segment, or like so focused on our roadmap, which is amazing. Focus matters a ton, but we miss the anecdote. Like once you hear like 3, 4, 5, 10 times something is there and like that you're gonna need to fix. So I'm kind of like I try to balance this pretty well. I think I feel that this is definitely my function.
I think that's important for leaders that are so metrics focused, that if you're collecting small nuggets from the street or from reps or from customer support people. We were talking to our customer support team at my company the other day, and I was asking them, hey, you know, like sometimes we get this flag on credit limits, like what do you see here? And they gave us advice that was an anecdote that turned into something that was informing our roadmap. And this would have never showed up in the data if we hadn't asked them about it.
Yeah, no, for sure. But that's it. It's like, I mean, we have like customer polls. We have like so many ways to show back this data. I mean, I'm also a data freak, but I think you have to mix both. Like the metrics, but really having like a pulse of like the business and being there. I mean, I take so much time to deal with like customer escalations. Like whenever like someone email the founders, the leadership, like people email myself too, but I take the time. I mean, I want to listen and I want to make sure that we fix and we do better.
I think there are stories about Jeff Bezos hopping into the customer support queue and answering people's emails and just being like shocked that, oh, wow, this guy, he's still in the weeds of it.
But but I do that, and people think that I scare people. So I do still shadow a lot, and that I'm in situations like where I see someone asking for like something, and like the agents, right, is following the procedure. And it's like, no, say that, Camilla Matias, say this. no, I'm gonna say it. Yeah, so I definitely broke some rules to make the right to the customer, and then I definitely changed the procedure later.
I've never had to submit a support ticket using Brex, but I hope if I do, you answer it someday.
If you do, there is a survey that gets to you right after. So please answer because I'm going to be for sure reading this.
Okay, cool. Are there any frameworks or processes you found to be especially useful in your work?
Yes. One thing, again, I think it's critical being very close to the metrics. So I have weekly syncs with like my teams, like what we call the business reviews, and basically like every team has like the metrics for operations SLAs, like then we have like losses tracking, like customer friction. But then for each of my orgs, they know that on Tuesday, that's the day that everyone presents the metrics. And I think this routine is extremely healthy because it goes from like the bottom, like everyone knows like what they have to do, all the way to upper management. And like then we discuss okay what we may need to change or not. So this is being close to the day-to-day and making sure that everyone feels owner of like this. This is pretty important to me. And I also believe that there are some pillars. As much as I'm crazy with about like the customer, I'm also obsessed about talent. And like this is definitely something that I shared with Michael. Michael was a great mentor, but I think developing people and allowing people to grow in the organization is very important to me. And I believe that if you do different functions in the org, you learn so much about the business. So like I have like this internal growth, internal mobility as something that I really track very closely. And even creating programs where people rotate from a function to another. I think like this is also like where I spend a chunk of my time too. And so it's not a specific routine, but those are metrics and like things that I follow.
Brex does seem to be very in tune with career frameworks, just from the people I've talked to, and upward mobility of the people that work there.
Yes, but this is so inspiring, right? I meet even like the CX agents, like new classes, like whenever like we have a new class, I meet them. I still interview like our rotational analyst programs. Like before they join Brex, we do like a huge panel. And I'm normally like, I'm always in those panels. But yes, but I think it starts with like how you select the talent, but how you also make the opportunity to people to grow. It's so good, like because you build someone that is like very fitting in the line with like the culture, like to the business. I mean, one of our values is ownership, but it's so true, like in a sense that, but you can build the owners too if you spend the time on that.
So you can detect who wants to be a driver versus a passenger, is what you're saying?
I think it's even more than that. You teach people to be drivers. You don't accept passengers.
That's good.
Yeah, so like, yes, from day one, you hire folks that want to be in the driving seat, and then you stimulate people to think that they can be and they should be in the driver's seat. And like you promote that behavior. You promote people that speak up. You encourage people like, hey, to not accept bullshit. It's like to try to fix things. So like when you start doing all those things continuously, and you recognize that, I think then you create an environment that is exciting and people grow and like you get the business results.
Speaking of that, what do you think separates the good COOs from the great COOs in your space?
Yes, no, that's an awesome question. I think first, I really believe in leading by the example. So strongly believe in that. Like, I mean, I don't know how to do this like in a different way. Second is create an environment of like trust. And the reason why I say that is in operations, I mean, in many situations, everything is on a fire, right? In operations can be so many things and everything can also be like ops, right? So you're creating this environment that you are normally the first one to know, like if like, you create like this throughout the whole chain, right? But that the message goes all the way up because no one is trying to picture in a different way. It's pretty critical because then you can't talk about like the challenge and like then it's not only that we're talking about the challenge, you're talking about opportunities and like everyone is working pretty hard to make it better. So trust is also leading by example. Leading by example, you can also say operating at all levels. Also something that I really believe, like there is not like such a function that I would say, oh, I'm not going to do that. I mean, I would be even like working as an agent if that's the need. So those two things for sure. And I think it's all about process, documentation, metrics. And again, process, documentation, metrics, process, documentation, metrics. So being very repetitive, like following like those routines and guaranteeing that everyone is very clear on that they are very focused, and is also critical to succeed in ops, to be a great COO.
Leading by example is something that people sometimes say theoretically, but then they're like, well, how can you tell? And I always joke that you want to make sure that you're hiring someone that's a laptop leader, not an iPad leader. And what I mean by that is that they don't just like sit and just delegate stuff, or they're not in the weeds. Like I firmly believe that the second that a leader is no longer like in an Excel spreadsheet, even to do some calculations, you've lost touch with the business. Like you're disconnected from it.
Yes, no, definitely. Right. And I tell this to all my leaders too, like, hey, you spend time on the keyos, spend time on like what the customer is asking, analyzing the deals like on the detail, not only thinking about the strategy at high level. And I mean, I do the same. So that is always a topic that I want to be very close on. So I normally have some time of like daily sync on a problem that I'm very involved in solving. And then I'm working with like the team to solve that. So definitely, the reality is it's so easy to identify who leads by the example because the whole organization feel.
That's good.
Yes, don't ask myself if I lead by example. Ask my team.
Right. You're asking the wrong person. Ask the team. Yeah, I love that. Camila, you are a very busy person. How do you avoid burnout?
Oh, great question. I think it's all about flexibility and adaptability. And when I mention like this trust thing, like it goes both ways, right? You also need to say what's important to you. So even my early days at Brex in finance, it's changed now, but early days, I was very okay working late every single day, even if it was until midnight and like be in the office like 6 a.m. I didn't mind. But I liked to have my weekends because like that's why, I mean, I had to refresh, I had to have a few days. And then you plan around that. Today is slightly different. So like today, things that I like to do is I really like working out and I really like being active. So I block my calendar. I actually invite Brex folks to come to work out with me. And like, yes, and it creates like a fun thing. But today, the main thing that I do is I put on my calendar the blockers, and my calendar is open to the whole company. So they see when I have a doctor appointment. They see like when I want to go to the gym. They see when I have like a half hour to speak with like other CEOs, like whatever it is, right? And again, this is what I believe is leading by the example. I'm opening my calendar to everyone. I'm saying like how I avoid that. And my expectations, like people do the same too. If you need to pick up your kids at school and like this is really important to you, block your calendar. It's fine. We all know what we need to deliver in the end of the day. So set your guardrails to deliver that.
I want to call that out because I think it's really important. And I think it's really neat when leaders have stuff on their calendar that you can see like, hey, picking up Jimmy at school or doctor's appointment this day. Because you're like, they're human. Like, and they work hard. You can see they have blocks everywhere else when they work. And even when it's like, I don't know, like a Barry's boot camp class one morning, I always think that makes a person a lot more human and approachable to know that they have a life outside of work.
Yes, I mean, and it's funny because I may be sending a Slack midnight. I hope you know that I don't need you to respond.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
Yeah, but I actually like stopping during the day to work out, and I may have like one-on-ones walking. I love having like walking one-on-ones in person or not. So you may see me like walking. I live right in front of the plaza, so walking around Auto Plaza, one-on-one. Or like when I'm in the office, I go to the office quite frequently. I have like one-on-one with like Pedro or like with like almost everyone in the executive team walking around.
Yeah. I've actually found that I can work harder and longer if I do take a break during the day to work out and come back. It's not like I'm cheating the company out of hours. I'm coming back with a fresh mind, and I may have actually thought of something while I went for a run.
Yes, no, for sure. You need to know what's good for you, what makes you feel better. But it can be the opposite, right? There are folks that really want to start, do not stop at all, and finish as early as possible to pick up their kids at school. And that's perfectly fine. As long as you set like those guardrails, and that's okay. So I think, be upfront of your needs. The way that I avoid is being very flexible with like my routine. I joke that when I travel, I ask, whenever it's a team offsite, I ask to book like some team workout classes, just so I feel better that I'm also working out when I'm traveling for work. Or if it's completely not a team related, but a conference or meeting someone, I ask, okay, I need a hotel that has a gym just to force me to go to the gym. So like, yes, and those things work out.
Yeah, whenever somebody from my team travels with me, I always pick a hotel with a gym or like near a cool local running trail, because that's my like selfish thing that I want to go out and go for a run and explore the city I'm in. It's just like a quirk. Like if I'm traveling for work, I'm stealing that one little thing for myself.
Yes, exactly. But it's not selfish. You need to treat yourself, right? Because when you are when you are happy in life and you're okay, you're also way more productive at work. We're all human beings, so it's a mix.
All right, I'm going to take you into what we call our long ass lightning round. So the first question I got for you is, give me an example of something you've screwed up in your career.
Oh my gosh. So I think this was definitely the biggest mistake of my career. I think Brex second capital markets deal. I made a quick call. I decided to go with like this large Wall Street bank that we do not work with them anymore. And I said, okay, we're going to do this. It was I would say 3-6 months process to select, to go through the whole document. The day of funding, and there was like a 250 million facility. The day of funding, they backed out.
No way.
Yes, this was like 30 days before Thanksgiving. And if you work in finance, and like you know that after Thanksgiving, between Thanksgiving and New Year's, there are no deals being closed.
Ain't gonna happen. Yeah.
Biggest mistake of my career.
Did you recover from it though?
I did. Of course, if not, I would have been here.
Yeah. And what was the mistake though? Did you feel like there was reputational damage? Like you went out on a limb to select this bank and it was on you, or?
I think, and like that's actually one of the main reasons that I ended up like moving to operations. I was sure that we were not ready to go on that deal. I would have preferred to try to do like a different structure, but there was so much push organizational wise to try to get this for this specific side of the business that was growing so quick at the time, that I just went with that, even though I didn't think it was the right strategy. And I knew I actually said a few times no, but let's go. And I was like, okay. And then, so I think that was the biggest mistake. I think everything else was kind of like right. Selecting was the best terms and everyone agreed with that, but not being very upfront and say, hey, I'm leading this, I'm not doing this, I think was my biggest mistake. But then it was a great lesson learned, because I had 30 days to fix my problem before Thanksgiving. And then I remember that everyone had like a solution in mind, and I had mine. And I basically said, screw this, now I'm doing like what I think it's right. I have 1 month to close. Everyone said it was impossible. We're ready. Yes, everyone was like, there is no way. And I remember that I called this specific bank and they said, I need this to be closed in 30 days.
10 days?
30.
30, that's still tight.
30 days to fund, right? But then we needed to go to credit committee, you need to go to the term sheets, like documents. Those capital markets documents are like 200 pages.
Oh yeah, if you're having trouble sleeping at night, read one of those.
Yes. It's very true. No, so then what I did to recover, and sorry, it should be a quick answer. I basically said, okay, how much is the upfront fee to make it work? I don't want to leave all the deals on the table, but I want to each pick mine and I want this to get done. We made it work. All the other solutions that everyone suggested, everyone had great ideas. They don't work at all. Mine worked. We got the funding before Thanksgiving. Everything was great. Could still finance project. It's slightly more expensive than the first one that I wanted to go with, but I'm very happy for the upfront fees and like this still being partner to those dates. It worked. But I almost screwed the whole company.
Almost. Hey, you're still here. So if you could tell your younger self something knowing what you know today, what would you tell her?
Don't accept no for answer. Keep asking.
Say more about that.
Yes, I think especially in the financial service or even tech overall, everyone says like, oh, there is no way that you're going to do that. And then one thing that I saw Enrique doing so much at Brex was like, but what if? And then we say, no, Enrique, this is not possible. And then he comes back the other day, oh, but what if we did that way? And like after 10, 15 what ifs, there is always a solution. I think for me, like I would definitely push myself to minimal what ifs. I do many what ifs today.
That's awesome. Hey, thanks for listening. We'll be right back after a word from our sponsors. Roll the theme music, producer Nancy. And with that, it's time to rep yo stack, sponsored by Tropic, the next-gen procurement platform helping modern CFOs take control of their budgets and bottom line. By combining approval workflows, supplier management, and pricing benchmarks all in one place, Tropic makes savings opportunities easy to find and act on. Visit tropicapp.io to learn how. Can you walk me through your operations software stack that you're using today? What tools do you use to get the job done?
Very fun question. We use Salesforce. We use Retool for like our internal tools. We use a bunch of like LexNexus, Direct, a bunch of like those risk tools. We even use Moats for some like modeling stuff and spreading of financials. But for software, the big ones that I don't know how to do, how to do it without, definitely V2 and Salesforce.
Good ones. What's the most recent tool you bought or requested to buy?
Ada for chatbot. We completely changed. Huge fan. Huge containment. Sounds like a human. Yes. So that's a recent tool that we implemented. Very good.
Awesome. I can't thank you enough for coming on this podcast. I learned a lot personally. I really admire the company Brex and really admire the career you built. So thank you.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It was a pleasure.
Roll the credits, producer Nancy. The Run the Numbers podcast is part of the Turpentine network of podcasts. It is produced by Nancy Hsu and edited by Justin Golden. Artwork made by Some AI Thing. Yelling and intro by Fat Joe. Don't forget to give us 5 stars. I really need this.